Welcome. My name is Dr. Walter Chen in the biology department, and also with a couple of organizations. So we'll be talking about birds and just environmental issues in general. And if you leave here saying, "Oh, there are people who care about birds," those are my people. How can I, meet with them and do more with them? Well, I would welcome you to hit any of the websites for many of these organizations, like Orange County Audubon Society. Unfortunately, I was going to invite you to a field trip tomorrow at 4 p.m., but I think the reality is that's not going to happen. So just with the snow, and safety and all of the other issues. But if you want to look in the future, especially once the weather starts getting warmer, uh, there are events, there's presentations. We probably will be doing walks where we look for the short-eared owls at the Liberty Loop, so they can be found here. And then there's other ones. The Bashakil is this amazing wetland that's only 20 minutes from here. They You can kayak in the warmer months. We do many of our hikes here. If anyone was so inclined, not only can you just email them and say, "Hey, I'd love to be on your email list," sure, and get notices of events and the like. If you say, "I would maybe even think of becoming a member," do we have a deal for you? Because there are calendars here, one for Orange County Audubon, one for the Bashigal. If anyone says, "I would love a calendar," they cost $8 to print. So if you wanted to leave a donation, that would be much appreciated. But if you wanted to say, "I'd love to become a member," there's a membership form. And then, for the membership, the yearly dues, you could take a calendar. A deal. Plus, it's the gift giving season. How many people in your lives would love those calendars? Anyway, I say no more on that, um, because we'll kind of shift to the sadder topic uh, today. This is the end of this season, this series. Last fall, we tried something brand new. We said, instead of doing like a talk here or there, where it's like this Thursday, and in 5 weeks we'll do one on a Tuesday. We decided, you know what? How about we just do one that's every Monday at the same time in the same room? Maybe people get used to it, and it was like this amazing hit. So we've been doing it ever since, and this ends the fall series that we've done, where we look at birds from every angle, all of the different groups. We'll be doing another one in the spring. Certainly, birds will be a big focus, but we'll be looking at other groups too. So if you enjoy this talk and you're, next spring, Monday evenings at 5:30, you're wondering, oh, if only there was somewhere to go, there will be, and we'll post, flyers and schedules there. The topic today, getting to the song, is I am not crazy old, but I'm old. But in my lifetime, our continent, North America, has lost a quarter of its birds. Now, that would be severe and noteworthy if like this was occurring over like 1,000 years or two. But like the fact that you can look at someone and say, like, in my lifetime, this has happened. And as we'll see, I mean, some of the things that are involved in this, they're not getting better. Like when I was born, there were like 3.5 billion people on the planet. There are now more than eight. All right. So if in my lifetime, North America has lost a quarter of its birds, and now the next, however many years, we're starting with, not quite three times that, but like, Persia, what's going on? So this is worth some attention. So why are birds decreasing in such numbers? And as I hope you'll see, we care about the birds, but it's not just the birds. Like a planet where the birds can't seem to survive, there's something going on that affects us too. Like if mercury and pesticides are affecting the bald eagles, that their numbers are dropping, and the lead, we're feeding on the same fish, you and I. So it isn't just about the birds, but that's the focus of tonight. Let's start with the big one, or a big one, is climate change. And I certainly can understand, that you may say, "Oh, climate change, I remember hearing about that, but like I haven't heard much about it recently." Oh, it's still a thing. Whether or not you hear about it, it's still an issue. If you were keeping track of the warmest years on Earth, they just keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So once again, when I was born, we were in this area. Like, so this line at the bottom, that's the average of the 20th century. So if you were to take from 1900 to the year 2000 and say, what was the average temperature? That's the line. Some years were below that, some years were above that. But like, it went up and down and up and down. And I was born in here in 1966. Um, but in most of your lifetimes, you have only known above average temperatures. So what you think is normal isn't. All right. So if we use the 20th century as like an average, a baseline, all right, your knowledge is, what you think a September is warmer than average Septembers. And so if I'm going to be going through this, but if you really want to know, like for example, NOAA puts out the monthly climate report. November's isn't out yet. But if you looked at October's, you would realize, wow, here's all the data from people who like every single day they're measuring the amount of ice in the Arctic and on these glaciers and in Antarctica. So this is, I mean, you can go if you love details, you can find out all the details. You could go right now. What is the mass of the Arctic ice sheet today? What is the mass of the Antarctic ice sheet, etc. And you can find out and you say, wow, so that's us in October. So if you were to take all of the Octobers where we've measured global temperature, we are clearly in a time of change. And if you were to say, well, what does that mean for like, I don't know, like this year? Well, it's not a contest, like, ooh, this is the hottest year, this is the second. The important thing is the trend. But we don't know how hot it's going to be yet. But the bet is that we're 95% sure that this year is either going to be the second or the third hottest year on record since the 1880s when the record started. So even if it wasn't in your on your radar, because I know there's a lot in the news, it was hot. What does that mean? Well, I'd like to start like philosophically before getting back to birds. There's a lot of things which are crazy. Like when Canada has like crazy amount of wildfires that the Delaware River looks like this, and I'm kayaking on the Delaware because I'm an idiot and I had no idea it would get this bad, and I have like breathing issues after that. So that's bad. And there are storms and there are these things which cause billion-dollar disasters, and we measure those. So we can measure the incidence of like billion-dollar disasters, hurricanes, etc. So those are the big things. Birds are affected by the big things. But then there are the little things. So for example, all right, there's a ski place not too far from me. It's smaller family-run business, but I like skiing there. It shouldn't look like this in like the middle of January. January should be its like biggest month where like all of the trails are open, etc. But we've had really warm winters. And if you ski, I'm sure you know that there are times where like they fully opened later. I mean, there were times where you could ski right after Thanksgiving. Like if you had really cold weather, good snow, weekend after Thanksgiving, come, they would make a lot of money. But certainly once the college breaks start, with the Christmas holidays, that's when all the college kids got tickets for new ski equipment and all. That's when ski resorts make their money. They're not fully open anymore by that point. Like they've only got a couple of trails. So I use this as an example. Here's a little thing. So a huge hurricane, a huge flood, like billion-dollar disasters. But clearly this is having an impact. Like in the area, like think of all the people who work here, et cetera. So as we look at what affects climate change, hi Nancy. The same thing here. You look at our Audubon preserve, our sanctuary near Goshen. The past two springs, the water has been crazy high, crazy high. And I say that, I know it's crazy high because I keep putting out these trail cameras, then I come back and they're underwater and I have to buy new ones. So it's just crazy high, the water. And then you get to summertime. So so you just areas which usually don't look like this, all of a sudden flooded. All right. And then here's by the Wallkill River. So obviously, that's a bench that people supposed to sit on, and the shore is way over there. But the water levels are surging up. But then if you've been paying attention the past couple summers, you know that the water levels go way down. So in addition to the billion-dollar disasters, climate change just means change. It's getting warmer. It's affecting how much rain we get, how many severe storms we get. And each year and each part of the world experience different things. So if we're looking at birds inhabit North America, a lot in the Midwest. it is just getting drier and drier and drier and drier. There are more and more wildfires. And if it varies from year to year. But once again, it's not the year and the record which is important, but rather the trend. So if we look at not drought, like not even look at drought, let's look at severe drought, extreme drought, and exceptional drought. Like exceptional drought, like that you would rarely ever see. If you just take a year and you say, all right, let's just pick parts of the country. This is a huge part of the country in the extreme areas. So this is affecting people. And we could talk about the people and how they're doing the farming and their access to water, but think about the birds. Think about the wildlife. There's just less and less water when a huge part of a continent just undergoes severe and exceptional drought. And then comes the fire. All right. Why do we have fires? Well, one, it keeps getting hotter. So hotter, more fires. It's getting drier. All right. Drier, more fires. But also then weird things you wouldn't think of. So if the winter is mild, guess what that does? That doesn't kill the bugs. Cold winters kill bugs. Mild winters don't. So the spring comes and there's all these bugs that otherwise would have died that now eat all of the trees. So now you've got warm, dry areas that now have all of these dead trees because the bugs are killing them. And now if something sparks like someone has a campfire or lightning or whatever, now this is just going to get worse and worse. And so wildfire is destroying more and more habitats as time goes on. So this is something that the birds have to deal with. Uh, with $1 billion disasters, they adjust because obviously $1960 are not the same as $2025, et cetera. And certainly we care about them from like a human standpoint because, your taxpayer money is often recovering for this. Lots of people lose their lives, lots of people lose their health. But if you were to just count them, it's just going up. All right, so this is severe weather events very often. So one thing is the rainfall that an area gets, but now a lot of our rainfall is coming in like big chunks all at once, which is causing flooding, et cetera, which is a problem. As the wildfires spread, there's all of this impact to air quality. And so, like I said, I had trouble breathing after this. All right. And actually, there's something I have now when I exercise. It's not asthma I thought it was for a while. It's actually exercise-induced bronchospasm. But it started right after this. So like when I started exercising a lot, like I use a little inhaler. I never did before this. But when I was out in Delaware on this day, there's bald eagles flying by, and I figured out I'd have to get indoors, but they don't have that luxury. And North America, on average, has really good air. We really do. There's really good legislation passed starting in the 60s, Clean Air Acts. You breathe cleaner air than most people alive today. All right. But if we have to worry about the birds, what they were breathing here in North America, a good air region. I mean, throughout much of the world, the birds, which because of their flight patterns rely on breathing lots of air, clearly they're having an effect. But what effects climate change is having? Well, we're still watching this, which is why we do our bird hikes and we go on eBird and we register our birds. And why, if you were to ask, what can I do to help birds? There's a bunch of things. But one of them is Birdwatch. And when you go in and Birdwatch is record what you see, because we don't know what effect this is going to have. We're trying to monitor it. This bird shouldn't be here. This is like a Florida, Georgia bird. It's called a little blue heron. It doesn't belong here, but we've been seeing it more a couple times in the past couple years. I saw a glossy ibis in the Pine Island area this summer. You may have seen them in Florida. If you once again, it's not a bird for here. They're spreading, and even I just say this to the young people. Kind of like myself too, but anyway. So if you start birding, you're going to get used to oh, red-bellied woodpeckers, they belong here. They do now. When I was young, not as much. All right, so their species name is carolinensis. They're more of a southern bird. them spreading out into our area, that's more of a natural thing. But just because, and I'm not being critical of you guys, but like you don't know what like Octobers are really like. Like your Octobers are already warmer than average. But in the same way, like when you go out looking for birds, you're already getting used to a changed set of birds. So this one is one we didn't really see as much. Carolina wrens, ooh, they don't do well in the cold and they usually die in winter. But the winters have been so much milder that you know what? We see them more, more and more. Uh, as I just kind of we'll switch out of the climate change in a little bit. Um, Last summer, there were six baby swans which hatched. They're called cygnets. And only one reached the point where they could fly. And I think one of the things that hit them was just how hot and dry last summer was. This past one, we went from 8 to 3 the last we saw. It was dry, not as dry as it was last year. So this is usually water. All right, you wouldn't know it. All right, but this is last summer was just insanely dry. So these are swans that want to be swimming in cool water, all right, and feeding on aquatic vegetation. So being super hot without water, and the only water is like essentially mud, obviously is stressful. And most of them didn't make it to adulthood. Only one did. So this, this is usually a place where, I mean, there's fish that you can, the birds are swimming. So this is last summer. So once again, the climate is changing, all right, and we're seeing extreme weather more frequently. And so birds, this is, what they have to, this is what they have to deal with. And you never know what you're going to get. So last summer, really hot and dry. This past spring, really cold and wet. I don't know if you remember May of this year. It was raining all the time and it was cold. Problem is, if you're a bird like a swallow, you're just coming back from migration. You've just flown from Florida. You've used a lot of energy to fly from Florida or wherever down south you came from. And now either you're A, going to keep on going to Canada, or B, you've got here to Orange County and you're like, okay, finally I can rest and lay my eggs and meat, feed my young. So in other words, you need bugs. You eat flying bugs. So you're going to spend all day flying around eating flying bugs. But if it rains day after day after day, that's fewer bugs. All right. So A, that makes it harder for you to recover from migration or make it the next step. And also B, you laid all these eggs, but you can't feed them now. So here, if all of a sudden we're hotter and drier now, and next spring is wetter, birds have managed to just kind of get by on whatever conditions are natural for that area to live with. And if we start changing that now, just a lot of them aren't going to make it or be as successful, be able to raise as many young or whatever. Now that's here, and I do want to talk about Orange County, but I also want to apply, this is not an Orange County phenomenon. So I'd like to talk about the Galapagos Islands just briefly, but just kind of to give you an idea. I have heard for years about El Nino and La Nina, the weather um, the weather forecast. And if you speak Spanish, the joke is like El Nino de quién? Like whose kid is it? But the weather patterns. I never really understood it. If you were to snorkel in the Galapagos, like you get it all of a sudden, because look at the current. You can see it and you're swimming against it. You're working hard, all right, to swim against this. And then you kind of learn and you hear like, oh, okay, this isn't every year. So this current exists only in certain years, La Nina years. El Nino, the ocean currents change because the global temperatures change and then that just overall pattern. So in La Nina years, you're getting all of this cold water from Antarctica that has all of these minerals in it. Then with all the mineral water, then the algae bloom. And now there's all the algae and then all like the little fish bloom. And then everybody eats that, like the green turtles. They have the turtle that you saw there. It's called a green turtle. And the reason is it eats so much algae that, for sailors who used to, to kill them and take them on boats, to like feed themselves on their journeys, they're green inside. Like their fat is green because of how much algae they eat. So all of these things, they're feeding on the algae, they're feeding on the fish. You're going to see penguins here. So in La Nina years, if you want to go to the Galapagos, don't go on land because it's like dry, like everything is dry, like it looks like winter, all the leaves have fallen. But the water, you can go snorkeling, you see all of these things. In El Nino years, they get more rain on land. So if you want to take a walk on land, much more lush, you see a whole lot of things on land. But then this is gone, and you'll just see like all of these skeletons of the marine iguanas on shore because the currents have changed. So now that's less algae, less fish, and you can't get the penguins, you can't get the cormorants, and all of their populations like lose three-quarters of their number. Now, that is a natural cycle, all right? But then you throw in climate change. Climate change means El Nino years come more frequently, and now they're more severe. So just like here, there have always been droughts, there have always been floods. So birds do have to deal with that. But if you're just going to make them more frequent and more severe, that's just putting extra challenge on the birds. And it isn't just Orange County. In the Galapagos, the same thing. All right. So this cycle, which has always been there, which has a really serious effect on the wildlife, is now, just seeing an intensification that otherwise wouldn't have seen. And just because we're global, let's just mention tropical forest before we come back um, to Orange County. So here's the only tropical forest which is a national park in the United States. So this is El Yunque. This is in Puerto Rico, and it's beautiful, but it's not big. All right, so I should memorize it. So yeah, I try to put it in these videos with the text so I don't have to memorize it. I guess it's another. Ugh. I think it's like 10 square miles, if I remember. Don't quote me on that. It's in some of my videos. So not huge. Like if you were to go like 10 miles this way, 10 miles that way, like so obviously it's a big chunk. But 150 fern species. Like if you were to go all throughout Orange County, like I think you could find, 15, maybe, a little higher. But 150 in this little area. 50 different species of orchids, 240 trees, including 23 found nowhere else in the world. You're going to find 13 species of just the coqui frog. So just tropical forests, right? They are just amazing places. More than half the species of plant occur here. More than half of the species of animal occur here. And then it raises the question, well, how is climate change affecting these forests? And we're not quite sure because like a lot of the species that live there, we don't even know that they're alive yet. Well, like that's the point. They're so diverse. We're still studying their diversity. Um, but not great is what we think. A lot of them are really specialized to just specific temperature ranges and specific rainfall. And if we start changing things, if we start making it hotter, which is the trend that we're going, 2 or 4 degrees Celsius, maybe by the end of this century, that's certainly going to affect um, uh, these uh, these areas. Now, I know it's easy to just kind of get used to what you're experiencing as normal. Like, it gets a little warmer. Is that okay? Well, if we look at like mass extinctions in Earth history, like there was this um, one between the Paleocene and the Eocene. It was the Paleocene Eocene thermal maximum, and a lot of species went extinct, and a lot of new groups appear right after that. Um, what caused it? Well, temperature went up a little bit, 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. We're thinking it will have increased 2 to 4 just by, the end of this century with all of the trends like still going up. So, we're in the ballpark of things that cause, really big extinctions. And I know this seems weird. We think we're living in one. Like North America's lost a quarter of its birds. If you were to rank the periods of dying in the past 500 years, we think we're in the area that's tied for number 2. All right. And just there are animals that like the cold, all right, and they have a specific range. As we start warming the planet, like if this is a latitude issue, now they just have to move farther north because all of those southern species are coming here. If they're on mountains, then they have to go farther and farther up. And obviously, you get to a top of a mountain, and there's somewhere where like you can't go any higher. All right, so there are species which are going to be hit first because as we start changing climate, obviously we're changing the conditions that a lot of them are very specifically adapted to. Okay. Now I'm looking at the clock, and after this video, I'm thinking, I've yeah got plenty of time to finish talking about climate change. And then I realized, wait, no, this is about environmental problems. Climate change is just one of many. So let me just kind of rush this, and then we get into all the other ones. Um, One thing is just like we have specific areas, that, we like certain temperatures. Water is really big on that, where like if you live in the water, the temperature of the water matters. Not just because like aquatic animals are often adapted to specific temperatures, but also that affects how much oxygen is in it. I don't know if we have any fisher people in here. But if you say like, oh, when am I going to get like my big fish? Is it going to be like, in April and May, or is it going to be at the end of a hot August? Anyone? Any fisher people? Yeah, it's not hot August for a number of reasons. One is they can't breathe. All right, the water's shallower and the warmer water holds less oxygen. So as we warm the water, that's going to affect a lot of things. And it turns out, just showing how diverse our impacts on wildlife are, um, we cut trees. All right, and we're like, oh, yeah, this would be a good place for a house or whatever. So we cut trees. So that's less shade. All right. Oh, and so I'm going through a bunch of things here. You're reading the text and you're like, it rhymes. This looks like a song. It is. Okay, but we don't have to listen to it. And so then we start taking some of the water out to, irrigate the fields, or to give to the town, or to use to homes. All right, well, now the water level is lower, which will make it heat faster. And then we're thinking, you know what, rather than having a river, if we like dam it up a little here, this will make a nice lake for whatever reason or whatever. But now that's going to heat up rather than being cool running water that heats. Um, when we drain off of a dam, most dams drain from the top, the hot area, not the bottom, which is cooler. So now that's the downstream is now getting hot water. A lot of people say like, ooh, this would be perfect to cool the power plant. All right. And it is. So as we generate power, which we all need, let's take the cold water from the stream, and then we cool all of our turbines, et cetera. But then we discharge it back into the stream, and it's much hotter. Like, and this was a problem a number of years ago, especially in Europe. Nuclear power plants need that. Like, you have to cool nuclear power plants. So you build them next to water. You bring in the cold water, you cool it down, you discharge the hotter water. But because of climate change, the water was too warm to use to cool the nuclear power plants. So nuclear power plants, one of its advantages, we can debate, all types of power later if you want. One of its advantages is it's not generating carbon dioxide, which will worsen climate change the way that like coal or petroleum would. But now, because of climate change, you can have less nuclear power because it's too warm to cool the turbine. So there's all of these things just constantly cyclically affecting them. So this affects the fish, but it also affects the water bugs. Like if you collect water bugs in streams, like unpolluted streams, you get these ones. But if you're not finding these water bugs, like mayflies, larvae, and the caddisflies, and you're instead finding only these ones over here, you're like, ooh, like humans have impacted this stream. I can tell by the water bugs. Well, that affects the fish and it affects the birds, right? The birds that are feeding on all of these. So, kind of getting back to that snow analogy earlier, there's like the hurricane that's the $1 billion disaster, but just, making the ski slope a little warmer than usual. It's not a $1 billion disaster, but it certainly has an impact. Here, I mean, you're still going to see birds and you're still going to see fish, but it's having an impact. The climate, the change of the climate is now changing all of the other things as well. Are we done? No, no, we're not done. Because we add things to the range. So when exhaust comes out of your car, there's nitric oxides, especially if it's warm and climate change. You make these things. When you burn coal, you have sulfur dioxide come out that forms sulfuric acid. Now, I mentioned how good we are, and we should give credit where credit is due. Your air is cleaner than it used to be. Like you breathe cleaner air than I did when I was, a kid growing up. In fact, just here's a couple things. In London in 1952, there was so much acid in the fog that 4,000 people died. Pennsylvania, because of the coal burning in 1948, also just the fog was toxic to breathe. All right, so we do breathe cleaner air, so we should give credit. But there is still acid rain, And like I said, not everyone has your air. In fact, you breathe cleaner air than most. All right. So Orange County Community College took a trip to China a number of years ago, and a friend of mine took pictures while he was there. But if you look at this air, all right, the acid in the air, this and the particulate pollution, this goes well above all of our safety standards where we would say, like, this is not something for children to play in, et cetera. This is what a lot of people, including children, are breathing all the time. And then the birds are too. So I'm kind of going back and forth between, like, this is bad for you, this is bad for birds, because a lot of it's the same thing. Like, I'll get to lead, I'll get to things like that. Lead in the water is bad for the birds. It's bad for us too. So we don't have to have two talks where, these are environmental issues affect the birds, these ones affect the humans. A lot of them um, the same. So there's acid rain. Acid rain then affects the pH of streams. You can say that's a pretty stream, and it is. This is an acid rain. It's just, it's a pretty lake. But if the acidity of a lake goes below pH 4, it looks crystal clear. Why is it crystal clear? Because nothing's growing there. I mean, it looks like lakes are supposed to have stuff in them. All right. And so if there's too much acid rain, you've affected the aquatic life that you can hold. You're affecting the soil. All right. You're affecting the plants that can grow, etc. Okay. Are we done? No, no. So this is from a couple of years ago. Latest thing is, I see some chat things. I just want to not neglect chat. Okay. You familiar with the Ooh, tell you what, let's talk about that in a little bit. Um, so if you go to Lake Mead, which is the largest reservoir in the United States at the Hoover Dam, okay? So here we have the Hoover Dam. Oh, incredible, incredible, incredible. If anyone, so forgive me, I don't know how old I am compared to you, so just let me throw this out. Has anyone ever seen the movie Fools Rush In with Salma Hayek and, oh, I'm sorry, the Chandler from Friends? I forget the actor's name. Anyone? Or am I so old that that's no longer a good reference? Okay, anyway, sorry. So you have now your homework assignment to watch when you go in. But anyway, so there's this rom-com, and it takes place near the Hoover Dam, and at some point, like, they're throwing coins in the Hoover Dam for luck anyway. But if you look at the scene, this is what you'll see. All right, I think it's from 2000, I think. This is what the Hoover Dam looks like. You're driving over the Hoover Dam, and that's the water level, and you throw it. And let's say you say, I feel so bad that I've missed so many of the classic movies. I'm going to now go on vacation to the Hoover Dam so I can reenact that scene. And you go, and what do you see? You see this. The
Oh
water
my God.
has gone down over this. It was 140 feet. It's now like 160 feet. So when water levels drop 160 feet and stay down, that's once again clearly a climate change. There are droughts, there are floods, and climate fluctuates. But when you see year after year just exceptional drought, all right, this is clearly having an effect on the people. All right, Hoover Dam, the amount of electricity it can generate. If it goes down much further, this is where Las Vegas gets like 95% of its water. All right, when I drove through Las Vegas, they were still like watering their golf courses and stuff. Like, I'm not quite sure why they're going to keep doing that. But I guess this is affecting the people. But then imagine the wildlife. All right, imagine it being so dry that water levels have dropped to that um, point. Um, Also, just like there are birds that migrate through. All right, so like Orange County. Let's just take Orange County. We are halfway between Canada and, like, the Caribbean and Colombia and stuff like that. So a lot of birds that are going to Canada, they're Canada's summer birds. They come through here. But then the same thing with Western Canada. They're going through the Western US. If the Western US experiences record drought, even if Canada has water, the birds have to get there. All right. So that's having an impact. Believe it or not, water is kind of scarce on islands. All right. Because you're surrounded by water, but it's salt water. All right. islands often don't have that much water. And actually, if you live on an island, like if you say I'm going to move to a Caribbean island, that's probably one of your biggest expenses is water. People come and there's water trucks that deliver water to your house. And you have what's called a cistern. So when it rains, you collect water in the big tank under your house. And that's what you wash your dishes and your clothes with and probably shower with as well, that the water truck is delivering this. Anyway, if sea level rises, as it is, as more and more ice melts, then guess what? You have salt water intrusion of the fresh water that is on the island. And so now fresh water on the island becomes harder and harder um, uh, to uh, to come by. Okay. And then we humans, we do a lot of things like we build dams. Now, the Delaware River is the largest expanse of river that has zero dams in North America, I believe. All right, so like this is wonderful, and just it's 25 minutes away, and you can kayak. I probably try to do over 100 miles kayaking on the Delaware a year, and it's wonderful. But in any case, shad, they come up here to have sex and lay eggs, but then they live the rest of their life in the ocean. So just like birds migrate, fish migrate. All right. Every spring, you can see it's the shad run. All the fisher people know it's like, oh, the shad are running. Let's go fishing for shad because they've come up. They were in Easton and now they're in Stroudsburg and now they're here, etc. And when is this happening? This is happening when the bald eagles are feeding their young. That the shad, they come up, they reproduce, but they're exhausted, and many of them die or they're floating in the water. And then these bald eagles, and no offense, but bald eagles aren't really all that good at catching fish. They're very good at stealing fish from osprey, who are good at catching fish. But anyway, but like when the shad is lying dead on the water, these eagles come and they just get as much fish as they can feed their young. Really important. So as humans modify environments, one of the things we like to do is put up dams. But now the shad, there's a lot of rivers, in Georgia and Virginia, where shad used to go up just like they do up the Delaware, but they can't anymore because you can't swim from the ocean to up this river because of the dams that humans have made, which then affects, the fish which are feeding on them. As more and more carbon dioxide goes into the water, carbon dioxide mixes with water and becomes carbonic acid. Now, I don't begrudge this because I'll be honest, last I checked, we have no idea why it isn't so much hotter than it currently is. And one of the reasons has to be that the oceans are absorbing far more carbon dioxide than we thought they could. All right. But there's a limit to that. And as they absorb more and more carbon dioxide, they're acidifying. All right. So then clearly this is then affecting the coral reefs. All right. Coral reefs are really negatively impacted by acidification, which will then affect the fish, which will then affect all of the food chains, including all the aquatic birds which feed on them as well. Another thing that we humans do is we tend to travel around a lot and we take things with us. And so when we take things with us, we often introduce things to new habitats, like sea lampreys, all right, which are now an invasive species, which has virtually wiped out. It's caused the extinction of a couple of fish from the Great Lakes and really devastated many others. So in the early 1900s, a Great Lake could produce millions of pounds of lake trout, but now very often for some of the species, it's only a couple hundred pounds a year, and 85% of the fish have scars from where fish from lampreys attach. So this affects people. All right, but once again, this is lots of birds live on the Great Lakes and depend on fish. And so here's another human change, which has just caused a dramatic effect on the fish there. And you don't have to go to the Great Lakes to see this. So I love kayaking the Delaware. And in August, one of my favorite flowers just forever is the cardinal flower, because it's just it's beautiful. Hummingbirds love it, but it's also kind of like this nostalgic sign that shows that like summer's ending. So if you ever see this like bright, red lobelia flower, it's kind of like a sign of, your summer's ending. And anyway, I could wax nostalgic. You don't see that anymore because then this thing isn't supposed to be here. This is Japanese knotweed. So if you kayak the Delaware, see all of this? That doesn't belong here, any of it. There are native flowers that should be, all right? The cardinal flower that feeds the hummingbirds, and then all of the other things that are like uh, the um, the flowers that birds are feeding on for seeds, etc. But if you just go, there's just Japanese knotweed. So this was a human thing. We brought a species from another continent here, and it has dramatically changed. Like, so just imagine if that was gone, there would be different plants there that would support different birds. So that's something that they have to deal with. So that is an invasive species. Last year, spongy moths were particularly bad, especially if you live as Orange County goes into Sullivan County, where they just eat, eat, eat. Like, I'm sure a lot of you know that you're like, it's night, and you're like, is it raining? And you're like, no, that's caterpillars pooping. Like no, it sounds like rain. All right. It's not. There's not a cloud in the sky. That's just so much feces coming down. So now in the middle of summer, you look up and there are no leaves on the trees in this section of forest. So clearly, obviously going to affect all of the birds that nest there or would feed on the insects, which would normally be in this shaded area. So another invasive species here. And we could go on, just this is highlighting things. Purple loosestrife, it's pretty. I like it. But once again, it doesn't belong here. So that has changed the habitat. And change, once again, I don't want to say change is horrible. And when I say invasive species, I don't want to be a hypocrite. There's two species you're probably looking at that don't belong there. The purple loosestrife is one. I'm the other one. Like my species started in Africa. Like I don't belong here. But we move around and we're like, ooh, here's a new place where I can adapt and spread. So I don't want to be too mean on the purple loosestrife, because we've traveled throughout the globe. So change is going to benefit some species, all right, but it certainly hurts others. And the point that I'm going to, try to sum up with in 15 minutes is it's hard to adapt to one change, but by the end of this, like there's a gazillion changes all happening at the same time, and adapting to all of them well when you're on a really strict budget of, there are birds like the yellowlegs and some of the sandpipers. They nest in Canada in the tundra, like the Arctic Ocean, as high up in Canada as you can go. But their wintering grounds can go all through South America down to Tierra del Fuego in the southern tip. So a bird can go from the tip of South America to the tip of North America. All right. If that's how you live, you're just barely making it. Like you're not going to be like, oh, I got all this energy reserve. It's been such a good year. No, like you're cutting it close. That's a really tough thing. And you start changing too many variables, that's just too much. It's hard enough in a good year to do that. All right. A couple of the final things here is okay, we burn coal. Unfortunately, coal has stuff like mercury. All right. Now, mercury, oh, okay, before I get that, like, and so how much coal do we burn? Well, just, if you fly in an airplane, like a bunch of things strike me. One, this is supposed to be forest. All right. I don't see forest. But also, it's not supposed to be light at night. All right. So it's coal primarily that's doing that. Now, depending on where you go, there's, we're obviously mixing up energy resources, but until, recent decades, it's primarily been coal. So that's a whole lot of mercury, which gets released into the environment. Just one other thing that birds have to deal with is if you're flying, I just mentioned a long migration route. A lot of times you're flying at night. And how do you fly at night? Well, you use like stars and like you've got these adaptations, these instincts, which have guided your species for thousands of years. This is new. Dealing with this much light at night, it messes you up. It draws you into cities where you fly into skyscrapers, and things like that. And so a lot of people working on birds, they're trying to like cut down unnecessary light usage at night, making windows less likely that birds will impact them, etc. I'm sorry, that was a different topic, but I was here, so I figured I'd mention. So who worries about this? Well, bald eagles do for a reason. So let me start with bald eagles. Because here's just a classic thing which is true of a couple of things that I could throw in. Something known as biomagnification. Okay. So if you were to measure how much mercury, or we could what I'm about to say, we're short on time, so let me just kind of economize. What I'm about to say would be true of pesticides like DDT. And if you're saying, DDT, I remember reading about that in school in the 60s, or there was a thing like, oh, so glad we're past that. Well, we are, but all of you have DDT in your body. Like these things, they don't go away. All right. And if you read like, oh, dioxins, oh, right, yeah. Didn't the Hudson River have problems with dioxins a couple decades ago? Phew, so glad that's over. You've got these things in your body. So just so you know, these aren't like, oh, back in the day. So the problem is that a lot of these are fat soluble. So they stick in adipose tissue. So if you were to measure how much of these things, whether it be the pesticides, whether it be the mercury, whether it be lead, how much do we see in the water? You measure that level. And you say, okay, well, let's measure in the water bugs. And you say, ooh, it went up. Why? Because it gets into the water bug tissues and it doesn't go away, it stays. Then you measure it in the little fish and you say, ooh, it went up. Then you go into the big fish. Ooh, it went up. And now when you go to the great blue herons or the bald eagles or the people, this is a problem of the things at the tops of the food chains, because if it gets stuck in the tissues, then the higher you are, the more you've ingested, because the little microscopic life, they're just getting out of the water. It's only a little bit. But now the microscopic life has more than the water did. And then the water bugs that eat the microscopic life, they have more, et cetera. So it just keeps going up. Now, you know what? I always forget to do this. Did I do it here? I have so many videos. Yeah, I think I did. And I'm either going to get lucky. What would I call it? I would call it, yeah, okay. On my video channel, I only put up my videos. You could throw EPA in there. Let's see if we get lucky. Advisory. Did I type in advisory? So what I'm looking for is an advisory. If you had the question, is it safe to eat fish from here? And I'm sorry, this is not what I'm. Yeah, okay. 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 All right. Yeah, yeah. So I apologize. I always forget to pull this up. But if you say, oh, I live in Orange County, it's not as polluted as most parts of the world, so we're pretty good. But like, I want to go fishing, I want to eat fish. We're good, right? Well, you go, and whether it be the national EPA or the U.S. EPA, there are some fish that you could eat 4 times a month, and that's pretty good. There are a couple, if you're going to eat it, tell you what, once a month, but try not to do more than that. Then there are some like don't eat these, all right, because of the mercury that they have, because of other issues that they have. And so some of the fish advisors will tell dioxins in this fish in the Hudson or whatever. And then somewhere on here, yeah, so general population, what does that mean? Well, that means like you're not sick. You're not pregnant, you're not breastfeeding, you're not a child. So a lot of the population pretty much don't eat fish that you catch in Orange County, or at least a lot of them. Now, once again, there's people, but I said this talk would be about birds, but it's the same talk, all right? The eagles, the herons, like they're eating the fish and they don't have a choice. You can opt out and say, oh, I'll do catch and release, I'll throw it back. I don't have to eat this. Or like, when, this person who's pregnant or the children, like, don't eat the fish, it'll just be me and I'll just have one. I mean, they're birds, that's all they do is eat the fish. So as we look at eagles, all right, as we look at herons, etc., yeah, there are some where like the bones just crack, that the eggshells have issues. So you work with people who rehabilitate raptors. They say like, yeah, here's an eagle with lead poisoning, with mercury poisoning, etc. Okay. So there's a lot of ones, and we're almost I'm just kind of trying to sum up. But this is an issue. One of the things that eagles have even more is eagles, they eat fish and they also eat carrion when they can. So we humans, we hunt, we fish, and we often use lead. We use lead weights when our fishing gear, and we often use lead shot when we shoot. Now you might say, oh, like I shot a deer and it got away, but it died in the woods or something. But there's lead in it, all right? A typical lead bullet has enough lead to poison 10 bald eagles. All right. Lead is really toxic. So if you say, oh, I used a lead weight on my fishing gear, like, oh, like I snagged it, oh, it broke. So that's lead that you just put into the stream. All right. If someone shoots something and there's lead shot, an animal, that dies, other things are going to eat that carrion and they're going to ingest lead. And so acute lead poisoning is more and more common in eagles, especially in winter when they're depending on more on carrion. Okay. We could go on. All right. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, there was a chat thing. Is that a new chat? Sorry. Oh, okay. So someone from the our audience, thank you, Adrian, says the environmental working group is a good area for seafood guides. Yeah. So in when and the previous comment from Megumi, hi Megumi. I remember that when the Olympics were in China, that if you have a driver's license, it was like an every other day type of thing, where like you could drive on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but then your neighbor could drive Mondays and Wednesdays, so everyone was like trying to adjust their carpools as a way of like reducing the toxicity. And a lot of people chose not to participate. Like, hey, I'm an athlete, I've been training for the Olympics, but some people said, I'm afraid that I will do damage to my respiratory system by competing there, so they chose not to. But once again, getting to birds, don't have that choice. They're breathing in the air constantly. Thank you so very much for that. Here, one other thing is just plastic. All right. We are afraid that in the very near future, the weight of the plastic in the ocean will outweigh all of the fish. And so just that's bad. It's bad because you can get caught in it. We all know the soda plastic things that have the 6 rings are easy for things to get stuck around their necks, etc. But if you look at gulls and things, very often in them they have bits of plastic. Not only because they can ingest it like this, but it starts to degrade. All right, so if you have all of this plastic floating around that's now exposed to ultraviolet light, it's got wave action, and so it's going to start breaking into smaller and smaller pieces that then get ingested. Okay, so at a certain point, we now start calling it microplastics. And once again, this is bad for birds, but I don't have to give a separate talk. It's bad for us too. You have plastic in your body. All right. So your living tissues also have plastic because you ate it. We're constantly exposed to microplastics, which we can't get rid of um, uh, ingest it. So a problem for birds, a problem for us as well. Also, a problem is what's in the plastics. Okay, because what's in the plastic? Well, I mean, all kinds of chemicals go into plastics. And a lot of them can have diverse effects on living tissues. Some of them we call endocrine disruptors. What I mean is they look like a hormone. All right. And so that when you ingest them, your body cells like say, ooh, I'm just received a message from my own body, a hormone that's telling me to do something. And it turns out it wasn't your body, it was the pollution that you ingested. So the classic example, if you don't mind, is BPA is an estrogenic compound which is used in plastic. A little history is there was research on, hey, like we're thinking of, some chemicals that might help pregnant women if we can simulate estrogen. And they were like, ooh, BPA is an option. Also, this other thing called DES, an option. Let's see how they do. And then, people were like, ooh, we like DES better than BPA. So they put BPA to a side. And then later they realized, oh, DES is causing birth defects. So that was kind of out. So anyway, back to BPA, they said, ooh, it's kind of neat in plastic. It gives plastics a consistency I like. And so all of a sudden, this thing that was originally designed as an estrogen to affect biological tissues as an estrogen was now becoming very commonly used in plastic, like plastics that you might, have in your water bottles. Now you're saying, but it's right, plastic, it stays in the thing, doesn't it? Well, things degrade, and especially if you're going to put it in the light, and like it's getting a lot of UV light, like on a hot summer day, like there's a concert and like all the water that we're now you're ingesting estrogen. Small levels, But estrogen has effects, so they promote cell growth, where certainly increase risk of a number of cancers. But also estrogen, androgens, but most of the chemicals are more estrogenic. They then affect reproductive development as well. So we are getting more estrogen than we used to. Also because just not just saying, there's urine. All right, so we're getting more and more estrogen going into our water supplies from the urine of cattle, or then even crazy. I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. Human urine is actually like a pollutant because we take things. We take like medications and stuff, and we're like, okay, well, and we go to the bathroom, we flush it, but where does the water go? Yes, it gets treated, and much of that stuff is removed, but not all. So, like birth control pills, um, morning after pills, really heavy in estrogens, they end up in the water supply. All right. Now, we worry about that with humans and what effect it might be having, but let's go back here. It's certainly affecting the wildlife because studies in the Chesapeake Bay, especially, lots of fish have ovotestes. What does that mean? It means they're male fish, all right, but they have some ovarian tissue in it, and they're making pregnancy hormones, hormones which we associate with females when they're egg laying. All right. And so, for example, once again, the birth control, it's in wastewater, and this is affecting fish at some point, I say. So, there are lots of chemicals which are estrogenic. And part of that is if you wonder why I'm picking on estrogen more than androgens, it's because, so what I'm going to say, this is actually a genetic term. All right, so I'm not making this up. We refer to the estrogen receptor as promiscuous. I have a song, but I don't think we have time. What that means is it binds to things other than estrogen. So some receptors are like a lock and a key. Only this key will fit this lock. Other ones are much more permissive, like a bunch of things can stick in there and turn it on and say like, oh, I've just stuck to estrogen when it hasn't been human estrogen. It's been a chemical which resembles estrogen a little bit. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. So there are a lot of pesticides, et cetera, which are estrogenic. So in other words, we're affecting the development of life. So in addition to things which are toxic, like lead or mercury or DDT, which will make the eggshell so thin that they'll crack, we're affecting gender development in diverse organisms. So the problem is you put all of this together, okay? And it's just too much. Like each of these is a significant threat to wildlife. Some of it directly to birds. And if you say like, oh, well, pesticide use, that's just killing the bugs. Right. So like I get like you might not like certain bugs or bugs in general and you want to kill them, fine. But so many birds depend on them, right? That's what they're eating. And as we use more and more pesticides, we have fewer and fewer bugs. At the same time, we're measuring fewer birds. There's probably um, a relationship there. Last thing is, right, yeah, I guess we'll go here. In the past couple years, we've been adding about 80 million people a year. So in other words, so if you ask at the end of this year, how much is global population bigger than it was the previous year? And the answer is probably like 80 million. That's a lot of people. All right, and they need homes just like I need a home. They need food, they need fossil fuels, they need roads, they need schools, they need stuff. All right. So from 1987 to 2023, global population added 3 billion people to the planet. So what is 3 billion? Well, population China, about a billion. All right, so that would be a China, that would be in India, and 3 United Stateses. All right. So from 1987 to for recent years, we've added China and India and 3 United Stateses. Have we stopped growing? Well, we are slowing, but we have not stopped. So there will probably be 2 more billion people on the planet Earth in your lifetime. So if you think about all of the things that are affecting birds, all right, so we're removing their habitat, all right, we're changing the climate, which is now, changing the temperature, it's changing weather patterns, a more severe weather. We're putting plastics and pesticides into the environment. We're, using invasive species, the whole list of things, all right. 2 billion people more will do more of that. All right, that will be like 6 more United States populations added to the world in your lifetime. So I started with a song that in my lifetime, North America has lost, North America has lost stuff, and I've lost the song. There we go. Has lost a quarter of its birds in my lifetime. I'm old, I'm not that old, but this is a trend. That's one of Audubon's big missions right now, bending the bird curve. Because if you were to count birds, it's just going down. All right. So where does this go? We don't want the population of birds and all other wildlife. Yes, focused on birds, but we could be talking about amphibians. We could be talking about any group. All right. The population are just going down and down. Audubon's really trying hard to bend that so that it stops decreasing or at least as strongly, maybe level out. Right. And that's important for wildlife, but clearly for us. Right. The things that are causing their populations to to drop, they're bad for us too. Right. And so by making, the planet better for birds, we also make it better for you, your kids, and future generations as well. So um, there are these great organizations which are interested in wildlife, and they all have different, they don't have different missions, et cetera. The Bashkill is very interested in protecting its wetland and trying to limit construction nearby to anything that might be dangerous to that. The bird counts, getting the data. Audubon is really big in that. In addition to providing grants for changing windows so that birds won't strike them as often and decreasing um, the lights at night, which distract birds. And so if this is something that interests you, there are just so many organizations which are working on diverse aspects of it. And also it's just fun to go out and enjoy the beauty of Orange County and all of the great wildlife we have. And if that's something that you're at all interested in, once again, all of these organizations in Orange County, there are many more. Like there's, the Mearns Bird Club, there's, Sullivan County Audubon, Friends of the Wallkill, Friends of the Shawangunk Grasslands, so many groups. So depending on where you live, maybe this is something, you say, oh, I looked on their website, they have a hike coming up this weekend. And I apologize if you tuned in late, the hike that I was going to lead tomorrow at 4 p.m. in Goshen with the snow probably isn't going to happen. So for safety, so sorry, I think just for the road conditions, we're going to have to cancel that. But if you look here, if this is something that you're interested in, I'm sure these organizations would love to have you as a member, love to see you at talks and presentations. So the two that I have on the desk, feel free if you wanted to take a calendar, we'd appreciate a donation to at least help with the cost of printing. But if you want to just give me your email address, I'll put you on the email list for these so that you get notifications of upcoming events, etc. So I'll ask if there are any questions, but other than that, thank you so very much for coming. And if you went, like, if you kind of got a little depressed and you're like, what hope, is there? Well, I'm sorry not to end this way and with homework, but you're the hope. Like seriously, it's you. If it's not you, then it's nothing. We have to do something to fix this, not only for them, but for us, for you, for your kids, etc. So, we all have this homework assignment to try to do better. So with that, I hope you stay safe tomorrow, and I hope all the students, your finals go well, and you finish up your semester as well. And we'll have another set of talks come spring. Next week, we were going to meet here. It's a little different. It's not a talk. It's a bird town hall, just so I talk less, if at all, and you tell stories. So if you said, like, I saw something in my bird feeder and you want to share, then share. I saw this on vacation, you want to share. So that was the goal for next week, that it's kind of like a chance for you to share pictures. If you want to email them to me, you can say, like, I took this picture on vacation at my bird feeder. So that will be our last meeting of this semester, but we'll have another schedule of talks for the spring. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent you my email.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so very much. I'll send it on tomorrow. Oh, and I know students, if this is, some students occasionally say, I would love so Lisa Johnson, if you just spoke to me, great. Anyone who would like, my name is Walter Jan at sunyorange.edu. If you send me an email or send it to, like, Orange County Audubon, but you can send it to me and I'll forward it on. That would be great.
Great. you'll let us know about the spring lecture series that you'll do, right?
Yes, and if you ever had any doubt, like for example, Orange County Audubon, here their website, they have events, presentations would be up there. So yes, you'll have all of the all of the presentations will be there for the spring once we finalize some stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
If anyone needs a signature or a picture, I get it. Not my first rodeo. By all means.
All right, everybody get yourself.
Maybe Chris, I'll get the lights there. I think.
Thank you.
If you show pictures to your instructor and there's like you can't see because of the dark, I think that'll be so purpose.
We're gonna put all of them, right? Okay. Hey, cheese, am I blocking anybody? Oh my God. Okay.
Here.
I'm
gonna do myself.
Right.
Say bird.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful
Thank you
evening.
so much. I love this.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was great.
That was very informative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. You too. Sure.
Just give it.
Sure. Of course. Of course.
Thought it was a really good presentation, very eye opening.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, and also just sure, one thing, do you have like a place that you post like your schedule? Like I know you're talking about one's like semester. You might see.
So,
trying to.
Yes, so, cultural affairs prints them up and so I tend to have them in this room, so they're printed there. Like on the first night, I'll have
Probably
them.
where they call it.
But yes, and if you want to email me, I have it, but Audubon will have it. listed. Thank you. We won't keep it secret.
Take care.
Right, you too.
Because I've been so inspired, I put out all these bird feeders over your list. I don't know like bears hibernating.
So bears don't truly hibernate. And if it's warm enough, I had bears go in to open my car and the cars of my kids, like a week and a half ago. So no, they're still out. They're still out. And I think
Bed down the whole thing. Had to be a bear.
I can't put bird feeders up my house because I live in the woods. I just can't.
So I stopped for the, I thought, okay, I stopped for the summer because everybody said that. And then I thought, well, hibernating, so I put them out again.
I tried out smart bears and I've had them. If it's warm, especially if they're male bears, like females might have cubs, so they're more likely to stay bend up with them. But if you have a male bear by itself, it's a long weekend, they're not hibernating, they can come out and start looking for food.
So thank you so much. It's real great.
I saw you're recording this.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
What I was wondering was that.
Yeah, thank you.
I can only absorb so much, so like if I wanted to watch it again.
Yeah, oh yeah,